What's a harmless lie we tell kids that actually has long-term effects? Story 1. Any form of avoidant nonsense when they ask a question. If they're old enough to ask, they're old enough to understand it, because that's when they're thinking about it. This applies to things from Santa to intimacy. Just meet them where their age allows for understanding in the context of their environment. Answer. My brother, as a school-age child, once asked my mother what an adult worker was after hearing the word on TV. My mother quietly told him they sell their bodies for money without any elaboration. My brother got the idea that there were people out there who would actually cut off their own body parts and dig out their organs and sell them, until eventually they died. After being given a vague answer for his own protection, he imagined something much worse. Story 2. Not really a lie, but when parents tell you that you're being dramatic or too emotional, etc., this made me bottle up all my emotions and made me afraid to share any real feelings. I just blew up my marriage because of this, and am finding out all of my issues through therapy. Answer. I have something related to this. I was always told I was too emotional, too sensitive by a certain family member through my entire childhood, adolescent, and early adulthood. I was shamed for crying, being angry about things, basically any negative emotion. A couple of years back, I was talking to this relative, now in their 80s, and mentioned that my then infant son met some of his family from my husband's side and that he took to them well and was happy and giggling the whole time. I said he's happy and that makes me happy. The relative replied, "Okay, name, calm down. You?" This relative's undermining of my feelings had become so ingrained in them that they automatically dismissed my expression of joy. I'll never forget it. It was the moment I closed my heart to them. Now they ask me why I don't share things with them. Story 3. Stop. I don't like what you're doing is an effective method to stop bullying. Yeah, maybe on Disney XD. Answer. Yeah, stop it. I don't like. That is a powerful tool for kids to quickly set boundaries with friends or peers, like if they're being tickled, being roughhoused, or some other form of harmless play. It's also good with adults. Loudly declaring a boundary like that will probably make them at least pause or draw attention if they are unsafe. Not likely to work with a similarly aged bully who is actively trying to do something they don't like. They'd probably just be like, yeah, exactly. That's why I'm doing this. Story 4. Not teaching kids proper names for private parts. Teaching them young enables them to describe potential intimacy abuse properly and clearly. Answer. This. It winds me up when people are pandering to religious extremists who believe it's their right to prevent their children, especially daughters, should be excluded from intimacy education because it makes them, the parents, uncomfortable. The head in the sand approach doesn't protect children from intimacy abuse. It makes them likelier targets. Preventing children from learning about their bodies and about the realities of the world is abuse and should be named as such. Story 5. Do what you love, and you'll never work a day in your life. Do anything 8 hours a day, ground to a nub. Story 6. There's an episode of Daniel Tiger where they sing grown-ups always come back and no, they fudge don't. Story 7. If you try your hardest, you'll always succeed. You can be anything you want to be. Everything happens for a reason. Story 8. What doesn't eliminate you makes you stronger. Trauma can absolutely make you worse, and there is no inherent value in pain. Sometimes suffering is just suffering. Ignore your bullies, and they will eventually get bored and leave you alone. Know the fudge. They won't lamau. There's someone for everyone. No, some people do end up alone, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Finding a romantic partner isn't the ultimate be-all, end-all. Answer. There is no inherent value in pain. My parents' generation often placed inherent value in hard work, not its effects. So basically, you should work your jerk off to do something, and not find an easy way to do it quickly and spend the rest of time slacking off. Ignore your bullies, and they will eventually get bored and leave you alone. The one time I remember there was anything actually done about me being bullied in primary school was when I snapped and punched the little cunt straight in the temple. And even then, I was the bad guy. Story 9. My dad once told my sister that the heart moves around the body, and that's why she could find her pulse in different places. I'll just say she believed it for a little too long. Edit. Spelling. Story 10. Anything about intimacy or relationships that isn't accurate, or any kind of cutesy shoot we tell kids to dress up intimacy or relationships. I'm talking cutesy words for body parts like genitalia, or telling them babies come from a stork. That's harmful. Be factual, but gentle. Answer. Hoo-ha is not admissible in court. I work in a field where I have to be trained in rights, basically a vague understanding about the fact that people should not be abused, and these are the sort of laws people are charged under. One of the first people who taught me that particular training would emphasize that cutesy words were of no help if something needed to go on trial. They are anatomy with medical terms. If you don't want your kid to shout, "Boys have male body part and girls have female body part," in church, you teach them that they are doctor words and give them context. That "person touched my no-no place" means nothing. My personal no-no place is a 5-foot bubble around me, so a handshake counts. Real words teach people tools to help themselves stay safe. Story 11. Being a kid is easy. People who say that forget how hard it is to be a kid. You're struggling through things that most of the world can easily do without much effort. You often feel excluded from whatever it is everyone else understands but you, and you have to rely on adults for everything while other kids are judging you for decisions that your parents' guardians have made for you. You don't know, yet, what's important to worry about and what isn't. And if you get it wrong, people scold you or make fun of you. Story 12. Telling tales is bad when they actually mean letting an adult know another kid's sibling did something you're not comfortable with. Teaches you to think that no one will listen when you have an issue or problem, then internalize that problem, and we all know what happens then. Story 13. Anything that pits them against their peers. I was made to believe I was smarter and somehow more evolved than my peers by well-meaning parents and teachers. My mom would make snide remarks about a preteen classmate wearing short shorts, saying she'd probably become a teen mom. It didn't matter that I didn't have friends. Nobody wanted to be my friend because I was just too smart for them. Stuff like that. It's taken years of therapy to even attempt to untie my self-worth from my education and grades, and to walk back my judgments of other people. Ultimately, those judgments come from my parents and other adults earlier in life, but have been fed by my own self-esteem issues. I ended up as a high school dropout because it turns out I was fudge autistic that whole time. The universe has a funny sense of humor. Answer. I have seen the long-term damage this has done to my spouse and his siblings. Not by teachers, but by their parents. They were basically told they were better than everyone else just for existing. As an adult, my spouse had a hard time with any sort of criticism, and it took years of therapy to, mostly, undo the damage. 2 of his siblings still struggle well into their 30s. Story 14. If you work hard enough, you can be anything you want to be. Nope, you can't. And telling kids that shifts the blame to them if they don't manage to achieve their goals. Guess I didn't work hard enough. Story 15. Girls mature faster than boys. This leads to high school girls trying to date college age and older men. It's becoming less of a thing now. But when I was in high school, all of the girls wanted older guys. I was 17 dating a 16-year-old who dumped me to date a 24-year-old. If people held boys to the same maturity standards of girls, instead of dismissing everything with "boys will be boys," things would be a lot different. But people tend to just ignore boys, figuring they're easier to raise than girls. Story 16. Don't fight with the kids bullying you. They will stop on their own. Finally, after many years, I had enough and fought with the main bully, and it stopped after that. Thanks, Dad, for your great advice. Answer: my friend had better. When he was bullied, the teachers told him to man up. So one day when he was picked on, he grabbed her head and smashed into the desk. Later had a court case. Thankfully, Judge was quite lenient, and it only ended up with being forced to go on therapy. But that leaves paperwork that closes certain career doors where mental stability is required, like pilot or police. Story 17. That I didn't get any presents at Christmas because some fat perverted fudge in a red suit said I was naughty when really we were just poor. Story 18. You can be anything you want to be. Then the kid get interested in something and the parent says it's dumb or will not make them money. Success is conforming to standard way of living. Story 19. There are children starving out there and would like that food. To make kids eat more than they want to eat. 1. That's a screwed up level of guilt to put on a kid. And 2. While sometimes it's fussy eating, sometimes the kid doesn't need more food, but we pressure them to learn overeating is normal and expected. Story 20. If you're naughty, the police will come and arrest you. Starting kids off to be scared of adverse to the police is dumb. I understand that in some places the police may be different, or that you may need to educate your kid in order to counter racism or bias. But overall, if your kid is kidnapped or hurt, etc., you want them to feel it's okay to reach out to the police and not just be scared of them. Story 21. Sticks and stones way break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Bullcrap. Words can and do hurt. Words hurt, cause pain, lower self-esteem, and can leave you on the sidewalk at school crying. That is one of the dumbest sayings ever after. Story 22. That anything can be achieved with enough effort. Complete and utter lie. Especially if your goal was to have a family of your own, or to become the best at something. Story 23. I was told a dog my aunt had ran away and just couldn't be found. I can't express how much it messed me up to learn, years later, that it had been ran over right in front of my former school, and when she was found, she was warm, meaning it happened recently. I spent years hoping she would come back. Story 24. Boys, girls are mean because they like you, even sets off kids' bullshit detectors. Or, if they do believe you, it just sets them up for shoot relationships down the road. Story 25. 1. Everyone is honest. 2. Adult beverage isn't harmful. 3. You have to look a certain way or you're not high status, not good enough. Story 26. If you tell someone that X bothers you, they'll continue doing X just because it bothers you, so never speak up. Good friends won't want to intentionally hurt you. Story 27. Not really a harmless lie, but both my parents told me that if they hit me with an open palm, it isn't physical abuse. What sucks is that I called 911 when my little sister was hurt so bad she was bleeding from her mouth. The cops came, and needless to say, made everything worse. My little sister was grounded for a week. I was grounded for a month for bringing strangers into family business. I've been in therapy for years, and I still have lots of issues. Story 28. Do what you like, and you'll never have to work a day in your life. Often enough, commercialization of your hobbies, passions turns it into a chore, not vice versa. Story 29. If you're going to tell your kids the standard myths that they'll eventually grow out of, make them as outlandish as possible so they'll outgrow them more quickly and have a good laugh in the process. For example, one of mine asked once what the tooth fairy did with all those teeth, and I answered, she's building a castle at the North Pole, and after many centuries it's almost done. Another, I forget the line of logic, but together we figured out Santa should have done something to get Jesus off the cross. He must have been a coward or something. We still laugh about that occasionally, picturing Santa at the crucifixion. Story 30. If you do well in school, you'll get a good job. Also, ignore bullies because one day you'll have a great life and job, and they won't. both lies. Story 31. Sticks and stones. Words do hurt, and pretending they don't teaches kids to ignore real emotional harm. Story 32. Stones may hurt your bones, but words can never hurt you. No need to even explain how this is wrong. Story 33. If you do X, the police will get you. I spoke to a cop once, and they said it actually deters kids from going to police when they genuinely need help. Story 34. I dislike the whole adults are always right and to do as an adult says, especially when an adult asks a child for a hug and the child doesn't want to and they get forced. It's teaching children that they don't have autonomy over their own bodies. Story 35. We need to stop teaching boys that if a girl rejects him, he should try harder. We need to teach them that if a girl rejects you, stop pursuing her. It goes both ways, though. Girls should be taught the same thing. In fact, it should be taught to everybody, no matter their gender identity or intimacy orientation. If someone rejects you, don't keep trying. Take the rejection and move on. Story 36. Your ancestors are up in heaven always watching you. Gave me paranoid anxiety and fear that I was in fact being watched constantly. Story 37. Children being told that if they fail to believe in the right God, they and everyone they know will not only be eternally tortured after their passing, but will deserve it, is possibly one of the most disgustingly normalized form of child abuse around. Story 38. The whole Santa debacle. I felt like I couldn't trust them anymore. The hypocrisy of telling us not to lie and maintaining a lie for years. Me questioning my sanity because I was sure I had heard the bells on his sleigh. Santa ruined my life. Story 39. I was taught at school that the stories in the Bible were true to some extent. I think quite a few people would deem that harmless or even good, but looking back, it's child abuse to indoctrinate them into any religion. Story 40. Don't be weak or cry because you're a boy. That's why men grew up bottling their emotion, thinking being weak or crying makes them less manly. Story 41. That if they work hard at a job, they will get raises and promotions. I did that, and all I got was the work my lazy coworkers wouldn't do for the same pay rate. Story 42. That Santa Claus exists. Why do we do this? We set them up with a mini Jesus, then tell them, sorry, we made it all up, and when they get older. What we teach them is that we lie to them. Story 43. That when a girl says no to your advances, it means you need to try harder and relentlessly harass her until she eventually likes you. Every single princess story ever. Story 44. Any religious punishments. I knew so many friends wanting die in their preteens just because not to go to hell. Or those thoughts that can be used as a bullying content, such as parents' view on different races, intimacy orientations, religions, etc. Story 45. The bullies are being mean to you because they're jealous. Said to make someone feel better, I guess, but 100% not true, or at least 80% not true. Story 46. Follow your dreams. No, following your dreams is horrible advice. It's a fantasy sold by the rich to blind the poor and keep them from realizing their lives are being stolen from them. I bought into the bullshit. Left my boring but secure career to follow my dreams. It's been almost 16 years after I realized the lie and stopped following them, and I'm still trying to claw my way back to where I was. It's looking like I'll never get there. In the end, all I have to show for it are a few bullshit stories to tell people at parties. People who were smart enough to realize that following your dreams will lead you right off the edge of a cliff and have the luxury of enjoying the novelty of my stories and then going home to their secure lives. You're gonna have to play the game one way or another, if not now, later, whether you want to or not. Accept that life will never be fair. You will never get all the things you wanted, and it's okay to be content with the bird in your hand and ignore the fucking bush entirely. You'll be a lot happier, I can assure you. Answer: you absolutely can follow your dreams. But because they are your dreams, they don't always solve problems or bring others joy. Sometimes too many people have the same dream you do. This is why many dreams are much better as hobbies than careers. Even some that could be careers have better, safer career options adjacent to them. I support your bravery despite the results. Failure is not weakness or an indictment of your dreams. It does sting, though. Story 47. You know, I was never told that Santa was real, and I grew up to be a skeptic. And that made me think, if we teach kids about this magical being that gives them personalized gifts as reward of good behavior, predisposes them to later believe in all kinds of magical thinking. Answer: I think it promotes belief in conspiracy theories, because there is actually a precedence in your life for a bunch of people colluding to deceive you. I told my kid Santa wasn't real. My husband and I are scientists, and we teach her that you should believe things that are supported by evidence. So we couldn't also teach her this guy distributes toys to every kid on Earth in the same night in a flying sleigh. I felt bad for robbing her of the joy, but she has us pretend to be Santa every year, even though we all know. So she gets a taste of the magic without the deception. Story 48. That everything will be okay. While technically true usually, unless set up with realistic expectations that sometimes it won't feel like everything will be okay and sometimes it won't be okay, then people get stuck when things get hard. Rather focus on growth mindset, resiliency, and healthy coping skills. Story 49. Do your best and you'll see that hard work pays off. Not a universal truth and not applicable to many things. Story 50. In regards to school bullying, when teachers said, just ignore them, they'll stop eventually. It doesn't stop them. It leads to them escalating into full-blown violence in order to get a reaction. What's even worse is when the victim is punished, when they stand up for themselves while the bullies get a slap on the wrist or even get off scot-free, if the bully is a teacher's pet favorite I found. Story 51. Being blood-related is more important than relationships with the people you aren't related to. Not all family will treat you right, and sometimes it shows more love, support, and trust to have someone in your life who doesn't have to be there but chooses to be instead. Story 52. You're so smart, pretty special. Yes, coasting through standard education has truly prepared me for the higher one. Story 53. Being smart, book smart matters. Nope. It's valuable in school. It can be valuable in some careers. It's absolutely worthless compared to solid social skills. It was a joke in law school. The A students usually end up working for the C students. It's not good as a rule, but it's true way more often than it seems like should be the case. Story 54. My kid stresses about politics because of school and the things other kids are saying. We tell him he doesn't have to worry about politics because he's only 10, but it's been difficult to explain things to him. Story 55. I don't feel that strong about this, but what came to my mind was that presents come from Santa at Christmas. I get it. It's magical, but it doesn't set them up for the real idea of what it takes to buy stuff, especially expensive items. I came from a family where we never struggled, but I always knew it was hard work from my parents. Maybe it's fine for very young kids, but not when they are old enough to understand things properly. Story 56. The lie that parents or caretakers are the ultimate authority on everything and are always right for no reason and don't need to explain themselves or anything to you like you're a prisoner in their home makes you completely confused by authority and either completely averse to questioning it or you're completely disrespectful toward it. No balance. Teaches you that it's not important and it's not your place to understand things. You grow up feeling unimportant and like you're not meant to be an important part of anything. It takes years to unlearn, if ever. Parent: because I said so. Child: but why? Parent: because I'm your mother, father, and I said so. Child: but I don't wanna. Parent: go to your room if you're not going to listen. Child: but why? Parent: I'm going to count to 3. Child: why? Parent: 1. Teach your kids the why for fudge's sake. Stop being lazy. Story 57. My mom used to tell me she would flush me down the toilet if I misbehaved. This led me to have an irrational fear about going to the restroom alone, once even peed my pants in class. Story 58. Because I said so. How about don't avoid the question and lie by saying, because I said so? When my kids ask why, I always tell them why. Quit being lazy parents. Story 59. Good things happen to good people. It sounds nice, but can really mess with how kids process unfair situations later in life. Story 60. Just wait till your father gets home. I thought violence was normal in relationships, so I accepted it. It wasn't until I actually saw men who talked to their partners and their children that I realized it wasn't right. Wait, that wasn't a lie. Story 61. Santa Claus, Easter Bunny, Tooth Fairy. I find them all difficult to deal with. We teach our kids not to lie and then lie to them multiple times a year for 10 years of their life. I don't know, I just find it hard to understand. Story 62. No, mommy and daddy aren't fighting. Teach your kid that even though parents fight, it's okay. Just be sure to show conflict resolution. There are constructive ways to have an argument, and they need to know what a healthy argument looks like. The first time they get a boyfriend or girlfriend will be filled with ridiculous arguments, and they need to know when you need to walk away and when you should spend time to work on it. Story 63. That you'll call the police to punish them, take them away. If your child is lost or in danger, you don't want them to hide from the police. Story 64. Both God and Santa are watching you at all times to make sure you're being good. Just kidding. Santa's not real. Story 65. That every adult deserves immediate respect. No, they FKN don't. Respect needs to be earned, and if someone gives you the ick or is mean or unkind, you do not need to be nice to them just because they're older. Story 66. Violence is never the answer. One day someone might try to hurt you, and violence might be the answer. We can't always rely on someone with more power than us to come resolve a conflict. But it's true violence is not a good solution to nonviolent conflict, except in the case of nonviolent conflict that is still life-threatening. Story 67. You'll understand when you're older? Oh sure, because nothing says clarity like piling on bills, work stress, and existential dread. Turns out, getting older just adds more questions and a caffeine addiction. Story 68. I would say just general long-term religious indoctrination, beginning before a child has developed critical thinking skills. Story 69. This one is controversial, but I honestly believe that getting kids excited about Santa for nearly a decade of their lives conditions them to being more welcoming of government surveillance and techno-fascism, as well as lying manipulation in relationships. Story 70. Telling lies to cover up the passing of a pet to avoid having difficult conversations. Much better for children to have that understanding and have experienced some of those emotions before it's a grandparent, etc. Story 71. Play "I'm going to eat you" while chasing the child. I think that even when playing it, there is something profoundly unhealthy about it, in the general symbolism, in what it can evoke for a little child. Same as the little beast that goes up. Some children don't like this little beast at all, and it only makes adults laugh. Story 72. Any lie about what happened to a deceased pet. Oh, Sparky went to live on a farm. Max just ran away. Or just straight up replacing the animal behind the kid's back. These parents think they're just saving the kid the heartache. But first off, it will just create resentment. The kid will resent the parent for lying about something so serious and not giving them the space opportunity to be upset. Second, kids need to learn about passing and how to manage feelings like grief. Story 73. Boys, don't cry girls, should be modest intention, to socialize. Consequence, suppression of emotions, shame for natural expressions of self, problems with self-esteem and emotional intimacy. Story 74. Keep acting up and this police officer will take you to jail, or I'll call the police on you and they're going to take you away. Congratulations on building a lifelong fear of the police in your children. Now, if they need the police or should be getting help from the police, they may be more hesitant or scared. Story 75. Violence is never the answer. Can be very harmful statement for kids. They will avoid fights, which is great, but they may not understand why other kids are violent. It can cause massive harm psychologically when another kid comes over and hits them. It also shelters them from the real world where, sadly, violence is sometimes the only option. Violence is the last answer and only in response to violence. Obviously, explain talk, run, etc., then the hit and run strategy, etc. But if a kid doesn't understand they can defend themselves, they often won't, which can lead to serious injury, bullying, withdrawal, stunted social growth, and a million other issues. Story 76. Apologies make it okay. No, actions do. Sometimes the act of apologizing is enough, but sometimes more is required. And if you've made the same mistake 3 times, action is definitely required. To quote a game character, don't be sorry, be better. Story 77. My parents used to tell me that my dead grandparents and family members were always watching over me. For many years when I was a small child, I struggled to undress or use the bathroom because I thought that my deceased loved ones were constantly watching me. Story 78. My parents thought they were saving my life, teaching me that I was inherently sinful, lol, but that fudged me up pretty good. Story 79. They are a sinner and have to hear about some guy getting nailed to the cross so they can be cleansed by his blood. Weird. Story 80. Lying or hiding where other family members are because you think they are too young to understand or are ashamed about it for some reason. Takes the choice of knowing away and ruins relationships. Story 81. I think adults avoid intimacy discussions or just forbid their kids to talk or ask about it, not because the children are immature, but because the adults are. Story 82. That the scary man. Will come get them if they're bad. That one is fucked up. I don't think it's used much these days, though. I think the most traumatic thing you could say to a child these days is, no Wi-Fi. Story 83. Well, this is not going to be your average lie, but it for sure gave me long-term effects. My grandfather once pranked me. I should start out by saying my grandfather never lies, except when he does. He is an incredibly honest man, but he loved to catch you off guard once every few years to keep you on your toes. I was about 14, and I was at a friend's house. He called me and told me I needed to get home immediately. I was obviously concerned. I ran home, small town in maritime Canada, and asked him what the problem is. He looked me dead in my eye and told me, there is a penguin in the basement. Now, a normal 14-year-old would probably laugh and say, this is obviously a joke. And don't get me wrong, I was immediately skeptical, but my grandfather persisted and doubled down with a serious look on his face that he assures me, there is a penguin in the basement. I thought to myself, okay, he calls me home from a friend's house. He sounds pretty serious, plus, who just tells someone to get home in the middle of the day on a weekend if it isn't true? So I believed him. I believed there was a penguin in the basement. I had never seen a penguin in real life. Penguins are absolutely not native to maritime Canada. But my grandfather said it with such conviction that I was now a believer. There was a penguin in the basement. Long-term effects? I don't fudge believe anyone anymore. Story 84. You'll be happy when lose weight, get house, relationships, money, etc. You adapt to that thing when it happens and are still unhappy. Contentment. Gratitude for what you have now and don't play that game because goalpost always keeps moving. Story 85. Everything is okay. When it clearly isn't. It's so dismissive. Kids know when bad shoot is happening. Tell them some version of the truth, please. Story 86. That everything they teach in school is of utmost importance, and you should always do everything your teachers, other adults tell you. There are absolutely some things you should learn and keep in mind, but I have never used algebra in my daily life ever since I had to do it in school. Meanwhile, taxes, which were never taught in school, have been used a ton. Story 87. My mom used to tell me that celebrating birthdays was a sin. Maybe it was just an excuse because we were poor, but I believed her. So I got used to letting my birthdays pass like any other day, no celebration, no cake, nothing. Now that I'm older, that lie still haunts me. When my friends buy me a cake or try to celebrate, I feel uncomfortable. I smile and thank them, but deep down I feel guilty, like I'm doing something wrong. I still find myself praying for forgiveness afterwards, even though I know it's not a sin. It's hard to let go of something you were raised to believe, even when you know better. Story 88. Boys shouldn't cry is the first that comes to mind. Men are not made of stone. They are humans, and crying is an actually healthy way to release stress. Story 89. You have to do insert action here because they're family. Or you have to love them, their family. No, just know. Love and respect are earned. As an adopted child who grew up in a toxic, abusive, and addiction-riddled household, I resist these sorts of statements with every fiber of my being. I don't owe my pieces of shoot parents anything, no matter how many times they tell me I owe it to them because they fed and clothed me. Story 90. A lie I was told that had tremendous effects on me as a child was that the Mormon Church was true. The amount of religious trauma I have is crazy. I think forcing any religion onto a child at a young age is detrimental. Story 91. That hard work and persistence will lead to personal success and prosperity, when really all it comes down to is timing, luck, appearance, and how normal you are. Story 92. Not talking about passing in real terms. Too many euphemisms. My dad died before my kids were born. I talk about him often. Passing is a part of being alive. We don't have to be comfortable about it, but we do need to be aware. Story 93. Sneaking out on your kids to avoid a tantrum. The tantrum will happen anyway when they realize you're not there, and to create anxiety because they never know when their caregiver is leaving. Just tell them calmly and walk out. Separation anxiety phase is normal, but you're making the anxiety worse by not letting them know when you will disappear. Story 94. That you can do anything you set your mind to, or that willpower alone can get you to where you want to be. Kids need to know that we all have different strengths and struggles and talents, and that some things, even if technically you can do them, might be a bad or even toxic fit for you, and that it's okay if something that's easy for others isn't for you. Story 95. Your kids will be a lot more chill if you just tell them straight up when you are broke instead of dancing around reasons why they can't have something. If you actually raised your kids right, they will understand and use it as motivation. If you lie to your kids about financial stress, they will just think you don't love them or find them unworthy of being treated. Story 96. You're too young to understand. Meanie, at least try. So what if it isn't entirely grasped? Children need input. Story 97. Adults always know best. This one messes with your self-trust. You grow up second-guessing your gut because you were taught to default to authority even when that authority is toxic or wrong. Story 98. You're just a child. You have nothing to be anxious about. Wait until you're an adult with real problems. Actually, I was autistic and being abused by my parents, so on top of regular anxiety, I had those complicating factors. You'll be shocked to find out my dad was the one who said that the most. As an adult, I can do things to solve my problems. I couldn't just make my brain remember homework as a kid, and I hadn't learned how to remind myself. Now, I can leave myself a variety of types of notes for things so I don't forget them. Most childhood anxieties can be solved by an adult, my adults. Just refuse to help. Story 99. That if they do good things, like chores, and follow the rules, then good things happen, reinforcing the idea that good things happen to good people and bad things only happen to bad people. Then when something bad happens to them, it makes it much harder to reconcile. Story 100. That an all-knowing, invisible sky creature created life and controls the outcome of their time on Earth. Story 101. All of them. You don't lie for any reason other than deceiving kids to act differently than they would had they known the truth. Story 102. If you work hard, you'll be successful without mentioning that luck, connections, and circumstances matter just as much. Story 103. God and the afterlife, just crippling to people. Unlike on TV, as I get older, I see more and more people get frantic and freaked out as they approach passing and are emotionally unequipped to calmly embrace the nature of life and passing.